The fog rolled in thick and slow, wrapping the skeletal remains of Grayford Station in a ghostly embrace. The street lamps outside had long stopped working, leaving the cracked platform under the mercy of a pale, sickly moonlight. Ethan Blake stepped onto the weathered boards, his cane tapping a hollow rhythm beneath him. He was 63, hair more silver than black, eyes still sharp but dulled by too many years of seeing stories end badly. Retired 3 years ago from the Grayford Herald, he had sworn off chasing mysteries. But old habits, like old scars, never truly faded. He told himself he was only here for the sound. There was something about the way wind moved through empty train stations that brought him a strange, aching peace. But tonight felt different. His breath clouded the air as he moved toward the ticket booth. It stood crooked, glass shattered, the inside littered with yellowed papers and rusting coins. That's when his cane struck something hard. Metal, not wood. He bent down and brushed away dust. A small iron box. Locked. Ethan's pulse quickened, not because of what it might hold, but because the lock was already broken. He eased the lid open. Inside, wrapped in brittle parchment, lay a letter. The ink was faded, the handwriting uneven but deliberate. The date, March 4th, 1978. He read, "They will find me before the morning train. I hear them outside now. Tell the truth if anyone ever cares enough to listen. His hands are not clean. He took more than a life that night. He took mine too. Please don't let them bury the truth with me." There was no signature. Ethan's breath caught. March 4th, 1978. He remembered that date. The murder of Lillian Rowe, the young station clerk who had been found dead in the freight room. The case had frozen in time, unsolved, swallowed by silence and fear. And here in his hand was a voice from that night. Ethan froze. The station was supposed to be empty. He turned toward the sound, cane ready more as a warning than a weapon. From the shadow of the old train cars, a figure emerged. A man in a long coat, collar turned up, face hidden beneath the brim of a hat. He moved slowly, deliberately. "You shouldn't be here, Mr. Blake," the man said, his voice low but carrying in the night air. Ethan tightened his grip on the letter. "And you are?" The man tilted his head. "Someone who remembers when this station still ran on time." He paused, then added with a faint smirk, "And when people knew which stories to leave alone?" A shiver traced Ethan's spine. "You know about Lillian Rowe?" "That name," the man said, stepping closer, "is better left in the ground." The fog thickened around them, swallowing the platform in cold gray walls. Ethan noticed the man's hands, one gloved, the other bare, the skin pale as paper, a faint scar running from wrist to thumb. "Who are you protecting?" Ethan asked, voice steady, though his heart thudded hard. The man didn't answer. Instead, he glanced toward the ticket booth. "If I were you, I'd put that letter back where you found it." Ethan didn't move. "And if I don't?" The man's eyes, dark and unreadable beneath the brim, held him for a long, charged moment. Then came the words, soft as the wind but heavier than steel. "Then you won't make it to the morning train either." Before Ethan could speak, the man turned, melting into the fog. Ethan followed, but by the time he reached the edge of the platform, there was nothing. No sound of footsteps, no shifting shadows. Only the echo of that last sentence burned into his mind. Ethan looked back at the letter, its edges trembling in his grip. This wasn't just a relic of an old crime. This was bait, and he had just bitten down hard. Somewhere in the dark, someone was watching to see what he'd do next. The station clock above him ticked once, then stopped. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The letter sat on his kitchen table under the warm glow of a single lamp, its creases casting tiny shadows like fault lines. He had read it at least 20 times, searching for something, anything, that could be a clue. March 4th, 1978. Lillian Rowe. His hands are not clean. Who was he? By morning, the edges of the letter had absorbed the oils from his fingers, turning them a darker shade. He told himself he was done with this kind of obsession when he retired. But something about Lillian's desperate handwriting hooked into him like a fishhook in the gut. By noon, he was sitting across from his old friend and former colleague, Marla Jensen, at a corner table in Grayford's only diner. Marla still had the sharp eyes and sharper tongue that had made her the paper's best investigative reporter. "You're telling me," she said, setting down her coffee, "that you found an unsigned confession letter at Grayford Station? A station that's been closed since the Carter administration?" Ethan slid the letter across to her. She read it twice, her face tightening with each pass. "This is dangerous," she said finally. "That man at the station, he knew me." Ethan didn't leave his apartment for the next day and a half. He kept replaying the moment in the fog. The man's words, the phantom train, the way the young woman's voice had trembled. She wasn't the only one. That phrase gnawed at him. It suggested something bigger, something darker. If Lillian's death had been just one thread in a web, how many others were tangled? By the time he finally called Marla, his coffee had gone cold. "She's Lillian's niece," he said without preamble. "She wants to meet. Says there's something I need to see." Marla's voice on the other end was laced with unease. "Where?" "She didn't say. She'll tell me tonight." A pause. "Ethan, I've been digging. Lillian Rowe's case file, what's left of it, is almost empty. But there was another death, same year, same town. A man named Daniel Kellner, officially an accident. Unofficially, a lot of people thought he was silenced." Silenced. The word sat heavy in his gut. "Be careful," she added. That night, he found himself on the edge of Grayford's old freight yard. Rusted rails gleamed faintly under a thin slice of moon. The young woman, her name, she told him now, was Claire, waited near the skeleton frame of a warehouse. "I didn't tell you before," she began, pulling her coat tighter, "because I wasn't sure if I could trust you. But my mother kept things, letters, clippings, hidden in a box. Things Lillian wrote before she died." From her bag, she produced a second letter, yellowed and brittle. Ethan's pulse quickened as he took it. It wasn't just another plea for help. It was naming names, and one name he recognized: Howard Kessler. The same Howard Kessler who had been the town's mayor in 1978 and who had built his career on cleaning up Grayford. Claire's eyes searched his. They said he was untouchable, that anyone who tried to expose him, they ended up like Lillian, Ethan finished quietly. Ethan's head snapped up. A shadow shifted inside the dark structure. Claire stepped back. "We're not alone." From the blackness, a voice oozed out. "You dig too deep. You find the bones people tried to bury." The man from the station emerged, but this time he wasn't alone. Another figure, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, followed. His silver hair caught the moonlight. His presence radiated authority. Howard Kessler. Ethan's stomach dropped. "I thought you were just an old newsman chasing ghosts," Kessler said, "but you've been talking to the wrong people." Claire's hand trembled around the strap of her bag. "You killed her." Kessler's lips curved into something like a smile. "Careful, girl." "That's a dangerous thing to say without proof." Ethan stepped forward. "I have the proof." "And I'm not afraid of you," Kessler chuckled. "You should be." Without warning, the man in the long coat lunged toward Ethan, yanking the letter from his hand. Ethan grappled with him, the paper tearing slightly in the struggle. Claire screamed as the man shoved Ethan hard against a rusted beam, the metal biting into his shoulder. Kessler watched, calm, as if this were nothing more than an evening's entertainment. "You'll drop this," he said, "or you'll end up like them. And when you're gone, nobody will remember you were ever here." Ethan's breath came ragged, but his mind was already turning. If Kessler thought he was just going to vanish quietly, he didn't know Ethan Blake at all. The man in the coat released him abruptly, shoving the crumpled letter into his own pocket. "We're done here." Kessler turned to leave, but not before locking eyes with Ethan. "Don't be at the station again." The two men melted into the shadows, their footsteps fading. For a long moment, Ethan just stood there, the night pressing in. Claire's voice broke the silence. "They'll kill you if you keep going." Ethan looked out over the empty rails, his jaw tightening. "Then we don't give them the chance." She frowned. "What do you mean?" His eyes hardened. "We take this story public. But first we find the rest of Lillian's letters." The faint wind carried a sound, distant, low, and impossibly real. A train horn. Ethan and Claire turned toward the tracks. Through the fog, the phantom train rolled into view again, silent, spectral. And this time, Ethan swore he saw faces in the windows, and one of them was Lillian Rowe. The phantom train's image burned in Ethan's mind long after it dissolved into the fog. He'd seen her, not just a flicker, not just a suggestion. He had seen Lillian Rowe, gazing through that window like a passenger who'd been waiting decades to arrive somewhere. Back at his apartment, Ethan spread the contents of Claire's box across the table. There were 5 letters, only one intact enough to read fully. The others were damaged, smeared, or half-burned. Whoever had tried to destroy them hadn't done a perfect job. Claire leaned over, her breath catching. This one, look. The date. It was written just 3 days before Lillian's death. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. Greater than, if you get this, it means I'm still alive. But they've started following me. I think they know what I found. The last line was smudged into illegibility. Ethan's pulse quickened. This isn't just a threat, it's a timeline. He picked up the partially burned letter. The scorch marks had spared only a fragment. Greater than train yard, midnight. Bring the film. A word that hung in the air like static. Claire frowned. What film? Ethan pushed back from the table. If she had proof on film, that's why she died. We need to find it. 2 nights later, they returned to the freight yard. The air was colder now and the fog thicker, clinging to their clothes, muffling every sound. They searched the decaying warehouses, the rusted boxcars with peeling paint. And then, inside one half-collapsed storage shed, Ethan's flashlight beam caught something, a metal tin wedged beneath a floorboard. His hands trembled as he pried it open. Inside, an old Super 8 reel, brittle but intact. Claire's eyes widened. She kept it here all these years. A voice behind them sliced through the silence. Put it down. They froze. Kessler stood in the doorway, flanked by the man in the long coat. This time there was no mocking smile, only a cold, businesslike resolve. You think you can just pull the dead into the light? Kessler's tone was low, dangerous. Some things belong buried. Ethan straightened. Truth doesn't rot just because you hide it. Kessler's jaw tightened. This will be your last warning. The man in the coat stepped forward, but before he could reach them, the ground shuddered beneath their feet. Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance. The sound grew louder, closer, impossibly so. The fog outside began to glow faintly, and then, through the doorway, the phantom train slid into view again. Its windows lit from within, shadows of passengers moving inside. Kessler turned sharply, his composure slipping for the first time. No! Ethan stared at him. You see it too? Kessler's voice was hoarse. It's not real. It's never been real. But the light grew brighter, flooding the shed. The air turned electric, every hair on Ethan's arm standing on end. The train screeched to a halt outside, though no rails lay beneath it. One of the doors slid open, smooth, deliberate, and in the doorway stood Lillian Rowe, her eyes locked on Kessler. You can't stop what's coming, she said. Her voice was both human and something more, carrying an echo that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Kessler stumbled back. You're not... The man in the coat dropped his weapon and fled into the fog, his footsteps vanishing. Claire gripped Ethan's arm. What is happening? Ethan's mind raced. Was this an illusion? A haunting? Or something else entirely? Lillian's gaze shifted to Ethan. The film will finish it. But you have to show them all. The tin in his hand felt suddenly heavier, as if it carried more than just celluloid. Kessler's voice cracked. You don't understand. If that plays, everything falls apart. Everything. Ethan's voice was steady. Then maybe it's time it does. The train's horn wailed, long, low, mournful, and the light engulfed them all. When Ethan blinked, the train was gone, and so was Kessler. Only the tin remained in his hand, and the faint, lingering scent of smoke and iron. Ethan had the reel developed in a small, independent lab, one of the last in the city that still processed Super 8 film. The technician, a wiry man with nicotine-stained fingers, said little, but Ethan caught him glancing uneasily at the frames as they passed under the light. "Strange stuff," the man muttered. "Whatever this is, it's not just a home movie." When Ethan picked up the developed footage 2 days later, Claire was waiting at his apartment. She had barely spoken since the night of the Phantom train, but her eyes held the same question his did. What did Lillian die for? They set up an old projector, the kind that whirred and clicked like a mechanical heartbeat. The lights went out, the beam cut through the darkness, and the images flickered to life on the wall. The film began with shaky, hurried shots of the train yard at night. Lillian's breathing was audible, ragged, quick, as if she was filming while hiding. Then came the men. 3 of them carrying something heavy between them, wrapped in a tarp. They moved like people who didn't want to be seen. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. The men dragged the bundle into a disused boxcar and shut the door. Lillian's voice whispered from behind the camera. "This is the proof. They can't bury her twice." The reel jumped. Suddenly, daylight. Lillian was inside a municipal building, peering through a doorway into an office. The same 3 men were there, speaking with someone whose back was to the camera. When he turned, Ethan's breath caught. It was Kessler, 30 years younger, and beside him, a police badge gleamed on the desk. Claire's voice trembled. They were covering up a murder. A child's murder. The images kept coming. Documents passed, envelopes exchanged, a name on a file that made Ethan's stomach drop. Emily Rowe, Lillian's sister. Reported missing, case closed due to lack of evidence. The last shot was of Lillian herself, reflected in a window, her eyes wet but unflinching. "If they find this, I'm already gone, but maybe someone will still listen." The film ended with a flare of white light, then black. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the soft tick of the projector, cooling. Ethan swallowed. "This isn't just a cold case. This is a damn conspiracy." Claire's voice was steady now. "Then we make them hear her." They took the film to a journalist Ethan still trusted, Marianne Holt, an investigative bulldog with more scars than most war veterans. She watched it twice without saying a word, then locked eyes with Ethan. "If we publish this, it won't just take Kessler down. It's going to shake the city to its bones." "Good," Ethan said. The story broke 3 days later. Front pages, evening broadcasts. The footage ran on a loop, Lillian's final words echoing across the airwaves. Public outrage was immediate and fierce. Old cases were reopened. Retired officers were questioned, and Kessler, once untouchable, was taken into custody under charges that reached back decades. Ethan stood in the crowd outside the courthouse as Kessler was led in, his face pale, his once proud frame shrunken. For a moment, their eyes met. There was no rage there, no threat, only a hollow emptiness. That night, Ethan returned to the train station alone. The fog rolled in as always, curling around the rusted tracks. He stood in the silence, listening. And then, a low, distant whistle. The glow appeared again, shimmering in the mist. The Phantom train slid into view, silent except for the hum in the air. Through the windows, the passengers watched him, not with malice, but with quiet recognition. Lillian stood near the door, her figure soft against the golden light. She smiled, not the haunted smile of the photograph, but something freer. Ethan raised a hand in acknowledgement. The whistle blew once, low and final, and the train moved on into the night, vanishing into the fog. Ethan stood there long after it was gone, the air still humming faintly. The truth was out. The ghost could rest, and for the first time in years, so could he.